four. Hi everyone, I'm Mr. Puckett. Thank you so much for checking out what's only my 6th YouTube video of all time and just the second in this series. This is 20 wholesome things. What we're going to do today is we have a helper of this channel that's gathered up the 20 most wholesome images and memes that they've seen in the last week. We're going to go through these together for the first time and unpack a lot, and hopefully by the end of this video you'll feel just a little bit better than you did when you started it. So without further ado, let's check out the first image. All right, let's see what she's got for us. Let's check out the first wholesome thing. Today you could be standing next to someone who is trying their best not to fall apart. So whatever you do today, do it with kindness in your heart. It sounds like a song lyric. I think me especially, I'm so apt to take things personally. You know, even if it's a stranger, if they cut me off while I'm running or something like that, it's my first instinct is to go, well, man, they must really hate me. And you know, I think I long for acceptance more than anything else. So that's definitely something I can work on, knowing that almost nothing is personal, especially when you're out in the real world and dealing with strangers who have their own stuff going on and might be suffering a lot worse than any of us are. Whatever you do today, do it with kindness in your heart, because you never know who might need it. I love it. Number 2, for 13 years we pretended to be cousins so we could rent a home together. We were told to keep the curtains drawn so the neighbors don't know what you are. We recently bought our own home. Excuse me. Now we voluntarily tell our neighbors that we are partners. It's time LGBTQ families are normalized. They look great. That's awesome. I've done my best not to get political on any of my platforms, and luckily this is not a political issue, it's a human rights issue, so I don't know if anybody actually needs to know this or not, that I'm an ally to the LGBTQ community, and if you ever need anything to support that community or to be a voice for it, I'm here and you know how to reach me. Something I grew up without a lot of interaction with. I grew up in this tiny small town, and kids can be so cruel to anybody who's different than them, that I think the social media has really allowed us to normalize a lot of the things that if you grew up in a small town and did see something like that now you see that it's not a political issue. It's a human rights issue, that love is love is love, no matter where it comes from or where it goes to. So great job for these guys. That's fantastic. They're beautiful. And look at look at my buddy. That's PJ on one of the first days I got him. It was raining outside and he didn't appreciate that much. You haven't been buried. You've been planted. Now bloom. I think that's a nice way to kind of say what we said last week. The slingshot, right? You're being pulled back, and you can only be pulled back so far before you start to bloom and you start to push forward. So, if you feel like you're being buried right now, just think of it like a plant. You have to bury that plant before it can sprout and become the beautiful thing that it's going to become in the future. He was so cute. Look at him. Housing program in Minneapolis that asked for donations since local grocery stores closed. Wow, look at that. Minneapolis, go. I guess that's kind of my hometown. I lived there longer than anywhere else. That is awesome. Look at that. We started the free grocery dude to go along with the free pizza dude, but we were doing single grocery orders, and I think we got to 240 before I left that project and I'm moving it over to Twitter. So we were able to help 240 individuals, which was really nice because it makes it personal, right? So you interact with this person in the future, they can come back and say, oh, this was so great, I made this for dinner, and you kind of make a friend out of it, but doing it like this, in such a massive way to help so many people at once. I love that, and maybe that's something we need to do with this channel, is to focus on groceries and getting them out to whoever needs them. So that's something I'll work on, and if you guys keep coming back, you'll see it in the future. Here, I can tell already this is something that I made for one of my old posts. It's an Ask Reddit post that I just edited in. What is dangerous to forget? And the answer is that you're worthy of love and kindness despite your past. And I've talked about my past a lot and how it's something that, I have not totally been able to put behind me because it still, keeps me up at night. And I guess that's another thing, I strive so much for acceptance because I wasn't accepted as a young age. For anybody that doesn't know, I have Tourette syndrome, and you might not see it come out in these videos so much, but when I was a child, it was glaringly obvious, and it made it really hard to fit in. So, and that's part of my past too, you know. So, being worthy now of love and kindness despite all the things I went through, not only uncontrollable with the Tourette syndrome, but getting into all the drugs and alcohol that I did, and then not being able to get out of it, and everything I did on the street just to get by. Worthy of love, I think, is something that I could still probably work on, and if I can, then I'd imagine a lot of people out there can as well. So maybe that can be a homework assignment for this week, to not only accept our past, but to realize that it has very little to do with our future. You know, we can push forward in any direction we want, despite the direction we came for. So that's fantastic. Next one here. Due to hard times, I'm selling my Pete Rose collection. He's my favorite player ever, but desperate times call for desperate measures. We'll sell everything for $400 shipped. Wow, Pete Rose, one of the better baseball players ever, probably the best that's not in the Hall of Fame, but we won't get into that too much. Oh, okay. I was wondering where the wholesome thing is. There's a comment at the bottom that says, I will PayPal you $400 to keep it. Email me. That is amazing. That is fantastic. And it seems completely random, too. It's on a public post. I love it. Random strangers helping random strangers. And then you can keep this, which is probably worth, you know, a lot more sentimentally than it is $400 to be able to collect all of these. I imagine he's a Pete Rose fan. I'm a Kirby Puckett fan. For anybody that doesn't know where the Mr. Puckett name came from, it's also a baseball player, but from my hometown in Minneapolis, Kirby Puckett. And I have tons of his baseball cards that I would never want to sell or get rid of. So that's fantastic. All right, next one, we got a tweet here that says, my dad always gave me physical and emotional affection. He still can't say he's proud of me without tearing up. I had a male role model who showed me it was natural to show affection, emotion, and love. The world would be better if men were comfortable expressing their inner lives. I think there's a lot of truth to that. And I don't think I realized it till I started posting some of these wholesome things and opening up myself to all these strangers and realizing that it wasn't so scary to do anymore. You know, I went 30 some years where I wouldn't dare cry in front of anyone or even tell my real issues, you know, whether it was psych wards or rehabs or counseling in homeless shelters. I just stayed all bundled up inside because I didn't want anybody to know what was going on. And it's just a million pounds off my shoulders since I started talking about it. And it's still scary, right? Like I still, my hand was shaking at the start of this video because it's still nerve-wracking to put yourself on display. And what if nobody else has these emotions? What if nobody else feels that way? And then they think I'm weird and they don't accept me anymore. But that has just not been the case at all. It seems like every time I open up, I get more and more messages about what I'm opening up about from people saying that I'm going through that same thing. You know, I can relate to you on this level, and that's just made me feel so much better. Actually, from the last video, from everybody that saw it, I got well over 100 messages on Twitter, and most of them, I don't know, 75 of them were about one sentence. You know, it was a 30-minute video or however long it was, and I got all these messages about one sentence, and that sentence was that I'm not happy when I wake up in the morning. And that's what everybody flew off the shelves to DM me about, you know, in the next 24 hours or even that night, was that they couldn't believe it. They see me on camera or running with my dogs, and I try to put off this happy and you know, happy-go-lucky aura, because I am a pretty jolly dude, but it's not something that just comes naturally to me by any stretch of the imagination. When I wake up, I have to do a lot of work to just trying to get myself to a normal level, you know, let alone somebody who can talk fast and smile fast and talk about these wholesome things with feeling and emotion. It takes a lot of work. So if you're out there and you're not happy when you wake up or when you go to bed at night, just keep working, because most of us are not. Most of us are not. No matter what you see, how many times you see me or anybody else smile and play with dogs and have a beautiful time, everybody has their own struggle, and we're all just trying to get over that hump to be happy. If that's, you know, by 3 o'clock today when I was shooting this video, I wanted to be in a better mood, or whether it's by, you know, September of 2021, I want to have these goals. Just move forward. Just move forward and you'll get there eventually. Next one. A few weeks ago, my dog died. I was very sad. I had him for 15 years. Today I heard a knock at my door. It was my 90-year-old neighbor. She had crocheted a little toy dog that looked exactly like mine, collar and all. I burst into tears on the spot and gave her a hug. She is truly the best neighbor ever. That hits me hard. Mr. Puckett was 15 years old when he passed away. Wow. And so many people on the internet sent me everything. I mean, people sent me food and flowers, and it was the biggest outpouring of love I've ever experienced in my life. And it was amazing that I live alone. I don't have many friends anywhere in the state, and it was so amazing that everybody let me know I wasn't alone. You know, even if around me there's nobody here, there were so many people that were there for me. Thousands of messages in that week after he died from people, and I never got through them all, unfortunately. If you sent me a message, I apologize. But people were there for me everywhere, you know, and I think that's something that if you're struggling and then holding it in, it feels like nobody's there for you. You have to realize that nobody knows you're struggling. It goes back to that first meme that, you know, we don't know what anybody else is going through in their lives until they tell us. So if you're struggling and wondering why no one's helping, you need to open up, you know. Just tell somebody what's going on. You can tell me. You can shoot me a message and tell me. You can tell your parents, your friends. You know, if they're true friends of yours, they're not going to judge you for what you're going for. They're going to have empathy and help you through it. So, 15-year-old dog. Wow. Next one. Depression is a flaw in chemistry, not character. Okay, I like that. I do have major depression. I have a lot of anxiety issues. A flaw in chemistry, not in character. It's easy to feel like we're broken, right? When I'm not waking up happy, and when I'm having these depressive episodes that can last for weeks at a time, or maybe even just a couple of hours, and it feels like I'm defective. I think a lot of you out there can relate to that it feels like I'm defective. But this is a nice way to say that, you know, it's just you're not defective. It's a little tweak in your brain, and then just keep working on it. If you work on your character, the chemistry will come. And whether that's through medication or sobriety or therapy, or even just having a couple of dogs and trying your darn best on your own, whatever it is, it's not a flaw in character. Next one, staying alive for the people you will become. You are more than a bad day or bad year. You are a future of possibility. You are another self at a point in the future time, looking back in gratitude that this lost and former you held on. You are not just this you. Stay. Wow. It's a lot of words. It gets a little jumbled there, but that last part, you are not just this you, I think is beautiful. You're just, you know, you are one single version of yourself. And if you think of who you were 10 years ago, you're likely to oftentimes maybe cringe at some of the things you did back then or feel embarrassed, and that's a beautiful sign of growth, that you're not making those same mistakes. And for me, it's obvious. It's not drinking or using drugs, but it's a lot of growth emotionally too, where I'm not flipping out on people for small things, or I'm not taking things as personally as I would, because there's a future me out there who needs me to do work right now. The work I'm putting in now is going to show up in, you know, rewards of happiness and mental stability in the future, and hopefully at some point financially too. You know, I think I mentioned last week I don't even have a bank account, but this is a great way to say it. You are not just this you. You have a past you have a future you, and what you're doing today, that future you will thank you for. So don't give up. My wife's been trolling me lately, shouting, "I love you," whenever I tell the dog that I love her. So now I have to pass a secret handwritten love note to my dog so that my wife doesn't feel left out. Families are hard. That's funny. You know, one thing we did when PJ came home, Mrs. Puckett was, I don't know, I guess maybe a little jealous. You know, every time I would hug and play with PJ, she wanted to come by and be that dog who was getting the attention. So one thing that we did, we'd always, we had secret treats for Mrs. Puckett. So PJ might be taking a nap or chewing on something and had no idea what was going on. And I'd sneak Mrs. Puckett into another room and give her big hugs and treats and everything like that. And she was just so thankful that she was still number one, and she'll always be number one. She needs a lot more love than PJ does, even though he loves the affection and everything. Her with her anxiety and in her past and everything she's been through, she needs a lot more love, and I am so happy to give it to her. I can't tell you. You're a good girl. Next one, we have our first cartoon. What will the new year bring us? 365 opportunities. Very nice. You know, I think I usually look at New Year's Eve and New Year's, or even the future in general, with nothing but anxiety. You know, I think, oh man, how am I going to have a job at this point, or how am I going to pay rent in March? instead of looking at it like all these opportunities and opportunities for growth, you know, whether it's just this little YouTube channel and trying to reach more people with positive words, or whether it's just me growing as a human being because I have so much work left to do to be able to accept myself, you know, before others can accept me. So 365 opportunities. Nice. And and there's another one of mine. That's great. There's Mr. Puckett right there. That's fantastic. You're not starting over. You're starting with experience. I think I put that image out on Reddit the day I got Mrs. Puckett, and yeah, and it felt like we were starting from ground zero, right? Because she didn't know how to interact with me. She was so anxious in the home. She didn't know how to run. You know, she didn't know how to be a free eater, to leave the food out all the time. She had so many things she had to learn. But luckily, Mr. Puckett gave me such a great 13 years we were together that I had a fresh start with Mrs. Puckett, but I had all this knowledge beforehand. And I think that's what we talk about when we say that progress isn't linear, that you're going to have missteps, but that doesn't negate the progress you made. You know, it's still there. You still have all that knowledge, and it'll make it that much easier to progress through that patch again if you did regress. So progress is not linear. You're starting over with experience. I like that. I don't know anyone who needs to hear this, but tomorrow wouldn't be the same without you. Yeah, I think I need to hear that more than anybody. This channel is a great way for me to communicate with people because I go full weeks, even months at a time without saying a word to another human being. I do a lot of my interactions online. I live alone and I don't have many friends here, and I'm pretty okay with that. I like what I do. All my hobbies involve being alone. But sometimes I think I isolate because I think nobody wants to be with me, you know, because I don't accept myself. So I often wonder that, would anybody even notice, especially now that I'm off Imager, would anybody notice if I just stopped putting out videos and wasn't around anymore? But so that's something I can work on for sure, that tomorrow wouldn't be the same without me. I know it wouldn't for these two beautiful dogs, but something I can work on as well. And we have Robin Williams. All right. Dead Poet Society? I think I haven't seen this in a long time. You will always have bad times, but that will always wake you up to the good stuff you weren't paying attention to. Okay? That makes me think of rock bottom. It's something we talk about in addiction as is the lowest point where you can't possibly go any lower. And unfortunately, I had rock bottoms, 7 or 8 times, whether it was seizures, at the park, or spending some time in jail because of my addiction, or whatever it might have been, the rock bottom where you just couldn't possibly go any lower. But then once you get to that point, and this is what AA and these 12-step groups talk about, that you have to reach rock bottom before you can progress through these 12 steps, because it's exactly this. It'll wake you up to the good stuff you weren't paying attention to. You'll realize that all the little things you had were so beautiful and perfect now that you don't have them. And it's an unfortunate way to look at it, that sometimes you don't accept or appreciate the things you have until they're gone. But if that does happen by chance, you lose something, it'll wake you up to all the good stuff you had that you weren't paying attention to. So, Robin Williams, rest in peace. My French immigrant wife let me know that she just tried a peanut butter and jelly for the first time. And this is her texting saying, "Oh my God, peanut butter and jelly, woohoo, so good." Appreciate the little things. I eat peanut butter all day, every day. In fact, I have a jar with a spoon in it next to me at all times. I'm a vegetarian, and peanut butter is a great way for me to get the fat that I need. That's funny. So appreciate the little things, for sure. I like that. Today, I was a part of something that I hope becomes an annual holiday tradition. A group of us gathered for breakfast at the Patterson IHOP, each bringing $100. We paid the bill and gave our waitress a $1,200 tip. It really is a privilege to be someone else's blessing. Ah, that's awesome. And the picture with the waitress too, I love it. I don't know if I've ever really been able to do that, not being financially stable as I probably could be, but that's fantastic. I guess that's a little kind of sort of what we were doing on the free pizza dude. We weren't giving money, but surprising people with food. That's awesome. I've never worked in food service before. Of all the terrible, awful jobs I had, food service wasn't anything I ever got into, surprisingly, but I can only imagine working for tips and how difficult that must be, and the feeling of relief she had to see what was probably a full month's rent, or in some cities maybe 2 months rent, come through as a tip. That's great. It's scary to watch everything get canceled, to see empty streets or watch Broadway go dark. But these are really signs of hope. People are making tough and painful decisions to reduce viral transmission. Right now, love looks like an empty stadium. I've heard this one, and I've used that a lot, that line. Right now, love looks like an empty stadium. Because we think of love, oftentimes as either romantic love, and embracing, or physical contact. But we don't very often think of love in a way of loving strangers. And I think this is an amazing way to look at it, that the people that are staying home, that are wearing masks, that are staying 6 feet apart and are doing their best, to reduce viral transmission, they're doing this for strangers. We're wearing masks not to protect ourselves, but to protect the people around us. And it's such a beautiful thing to see. And unfortunately, Nashville doesn't really have that going on. Our numbers are skyrocketing through the roof. And don't let me bore you with COVID. I know you hear it on every other platform, but right now, love looks like an empty stadium. These little things you can do to help the people around you that you've never even met, that's love. All right, we got just a couple left here. I had to reset to get the dogs back. I think I found that their attention span is far less than 20 minutes, so we'll get through. I think we got 2 left here, so let's see what we got. My assisted living is on lockdown, so he comes every day to see his dad, and they talk through the phone. Sweetest thing ever. That's fantastic. We were just talking about that, strangers doing the work for everyone else. And this is, I love this. There's 2 ways you can look at this image. You can see this and say, oh gosh, the son can't even see his dad. They can't even hug or share a meal together. What a terrible thing. But you can also look at it and see the resilience of mankind. This person isn't gonna let a pandemic, worldwide pandemic, come between him and his father. Now, sure, there's a window between them, but he's still there to comfort his father and vice versa. And if you just look at all the holes that people jump over and the hurdles they clear just to be able to continue on with love, and that's love of parents or love of dogs or romantic love or whatever it might be, the resiliency of mankind when they're looking to spread love or to accept it. That's fantastic. My parents, I think I mentioned in the last video that I haven't seen them in a couple years, and after that, my best friend Z-Heart called me and she said, we'd be more than happy to drive you from Nashville to Minneapolis so you can go and see your parents. And I didn't know what to say. I played it off real cool, calm, and collected, and I said, oh, that's really nice, thank you. But in the inside, I was just bursting with joy. Like, nobody has ever said anything or done anything that wildly kind. I mean, can you imagine taking, a week off of work and driving somebody just so they can go see their parents during a pandemic? It was the most beautiful thing. Z-Heart, I love you if you're watching, and I'd be more than happy to do that and film it too. We'll get Grandma Puckett on one of these YouTube videos. She's a fantastic woman, and my father too, who takes care of her every day. So there's 2 ways you can look at all of these memes, but this one to me just simply speaks of the resiliency of mankind in their search for love. It's fantastic. We have our last one. This is great. We have our last one, and Mrs. Puckett is still here, has not run away yet. Picasso has created more than 50,000 works of art. How many are considered masterpieces that we still admire today? About 100. Less than 1% of his creations are relevant. Stop trying to be perfect. It's a numbers game. Start creating. Be courageous enough to share. And that's something that I go through when I mention that with these videos, it's the most nerve-wracking thing I do all week. Not even really shooting them. I feel pretty comfortable shooting them because I'm looking at a cell phone on a stack of books. This could not be any more amateur. There's nobody here watching, but when 5 o'clock comes on Thursday and Friday, when I put out these videos at the same time every week, my hands are shaking, my voice is cracking. I make it public and then put it on Twitter, and all I can think is, it's not that nobody's going to watch it, it's that everybody that watches it is going to hate it, and they're going to tell me about it too. And that it's, you know, it's an irrational fear, and it makes it even more irrational that I know it's irrational. But it's that fear of not being accepted, you know, whether that's friendship and in person, or putting out an amateur video and trying to brighten people's day. So this is something that I could certainly take more seriously, and I think a lot of you could, whether you're an artist, a musician, maybe you just want to post wholesome things on Reddit. I don't know, but if you're scared to do it, you know, that fear should not hold you back. You know, look at Picasso. He had 50,000 works of art, and if only 100 were still remembered today, that doesn't mean that the other 49,000 other works of art that he had were not any good. There's still, you know, they're still going to be selling for this large amount of money just because they were Picasso. So not everything you put out is going to be perfect. Not everything you put out is going to be great. You know, we talked about Michael Jordan and how many shots he missed. You know, and you're going to have good days and bad days, but if you don't try and if you don't put yourself out there, you're going to have a lot of more bad days just wondering what could have been. And that's the worst thing to wonder, what could have been. So take your shot and see what happens. And if you need some encouragement, shoot me a message, and I'll be the first person on the video, you know, on Instagram or whatever it is, giving you a shout out and saying everything is perfect. I think everybody who does that on these videos, you leave the most beautiful comments and make me feel accepted on a platform that I knew nothing about a month ago. So it's been a really fantastic ride for me. That's our 20th image. We do have one more piece of business. Last week, I encouraged everybody to get off the couch and to get the heart rate moving, get the endorphins up, and see if you could do some exercise that hopefully brought you joy. I'll put our running week up here. We've been running less miles because it's been a little chilly. I mean, 30 degrees isn't that cold, but it's been colder, and we've been having some rain and gloomy days. So we're running a little bit less, but we're still getting out there every day, because without that running, you know, I just turn into a complete mess. You know, we talked about that emotional and mental stability. You know, some of the biggest things to do for that are physical actions, whether that's proper sleep, proper food, proper exercise. So if you went out and you were able to do something active last week, I'm really proud of you, and I'd love to hear about it in the comments. If you weren't able to do it, I encourage you to do it this next week. We'll do these little kind of challenges and goals every week to see if we can better ourselves as a community. This isn't me talking to you through a camera. This is a community seeing these memes together for the first time and trying to better ourselves, you know, individually and then as a collective group. We are a community here, and we all want that community to strive and do better, and that starts with every single one of you doing your best. So thank you so much for stopping by the video. We got 20 wholesome things out of the way here. No tears today, which was very good, and only one cut to bring the dogs back. So hopefully these videos continue to grow as I grow with my knowledge of the platform, and hopefully you guys keep coming back. I can't thank you enough. So we'll end this video here, and we'll see you next time on whatever big thing we decide to do next. Thank you so much for dropping by.